In a special two-part series, we sit down with Ainslie MacLeod, past life psychic and author of The Instruction, The Old Soul's Guidebook, and Conscious Healing, to explore the evolution of the soul through reincarnation and what soul growth looks like across lifetimes. Together, we discuss everything from karmic lessons and soul levels to the changing role of women, the differences between old souls and young souls, and how understanding soul maturity can deepen empathy and compassion for ourselves and others. Ainsley also shares personal insight into Jaisa and my soul ages, unique soul characteristics, and even a past life we shared together, offering a powerful lens for understanding how soul patterns show up in this lifetime. This conversation is about context over judgment, growth over comparison, and remembering that every soul is exactly where it needs to be. And with that, let's dive in. Let me just say, Ainsley, that I had the privilege of discovering you years ago when you were on Super Soul Sunday with Oprah. I'm an avid listener of that podcast, and that's
Yeah.
how I first discovered you. And I immediately went out and bought your book called The Instruction,
Mhm.
because you talk all about how there are soul ages. And so you believe in reincarnation, that we come back time after time and live multiple lifetimes. And each time we learn and grow and evolve as a soul.
Yep.
And eventually, if I'm understanding correctly, we go on and become spirit guides for others once we've learned everything there is to know.
That's
Is that
kind of it,
accurate?
in a nutshell, yeah. Actually, I'm very fond of saying that reincarnation explains everything. I mean, I've even often said at events, "Challenge me, throw out anything about human beings, and I'll show you how reincarnation plays into it." It's from our entire personalities, which are just based on things we've done before and learned in other lifetimes, and all our quirks and idiosyncrasies. It's just the weird things we do. It's really what makes us human. But that's why we have such diversity. But you could also really, I mean, it massively helps to understand people. I found when I first learned this stuff from the spirit world that it made me much more accepting of of others. I don't mean condoning
Yeah.
bad behavior at all, but just, oh, this is where it comes from.
I actually was thinking about that earlier this week, knowing that we were going to have you on and
Mhm.
knowing, we live in Minnesota. So I don't know if you've seen on the news, but things are heavy
Ab-
here right now.
Absolutely.
And this insight from your book has been so beneficial for me to just have understanding and a little bit of grace. Maybe not, like you said, excusing poor behavior, but an
No, absolutely not.
understanding that a young soul has a very different mindset and outlook on the world.
Yeah.
So, can you touch and talk through a little bit old soul versus young soul and how that looks and how that evolves with time?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the fundamental things about why reincarnation explains so much, because um, the soul's journey, the way I always explain, well, there's different ways of explaining it, but I usually say it takes us from a place of me to we, or more sort of self-centered, self-absorbed, to more altruistic. Ultimately, um, it's actually a continual quest for empathy. It's all about opening the heart chakra. The more open the heart chakra is, the more empathic you become, and it takes lifetimes to get to that place. So for that reason, one of the ways that you really see the big difference between young and old souls is it's political. It's the difference between right and left, and those who are just getting their knickers in a twist about stuff that older souls don't, and the older souls are the ones who are just wanting a little bit more to live in harmony. I mean, actually, what you've got going on over there right now is a little kind of, sort of an object lesson in that. You've got the militarized young souls, and who are able to behave very callously because they have no real empathy. They're unable to put
Mm,
themselves in somebody else's shoes, and
mhm.
therefore it's like, that's the people that they're beating up or shooting on the streets are the other, and there's no real ability to connect. I mean, there are other factors playing into it that can create a level of sociopathy and so on. But um, bottom line is, it comes down to how open your heart chakra is. And you've got um, uh, like people like Alex Preddy, for example, concerned about, even, seconds before he was killed, um, he was trying to help others. And that's,
Yeah.
he's the old soul concerned about other people. It's not just about himself. That's actually one of the signs of being a very old soul, is that you take to the streets not just for yourself, but it's for others as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Something
it,
you'd said is so interesting. So, Jason and I have been talking a lot about there's kind of this big push around toxic empathy. That I don't know if you've seen that, but there's this kind of like buzzword of
Mhm.
empathy getting to a point where somehow it's unhealthy. Can you weigh in on any of that?
Well, I mean, I could say that there is a sort of toxic empathy that's associated with narcissistic behavior, but I think what we've seen over the last, well, decade, I guess, or maybe more, is this disparaging attitude towards empathy. Elon Musk said it was like the empathy was the cause of the downfall of Western civilization.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Yeah, I know.
don't get me started. But um, I mean, that's completely nonsense. But what it's all about, this whole woke thing is just, it's about disparaging compassion and empathy. Like there's something wrong with it. I mean, it's just, this is what we're aiming to get to, that place. You want to be woke. I mean,
Yeah.
who the hell wouldn't? Well, young souls, I guess. But that's it. I mean, sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you be over empathic? I think sometimes people do need to. They need to get boundaries around the heart chakra. There's no question. If I mean, I've had clients who, I say to them something like, "Oh, there's there's a path open to you to being a counselor," and they go, "Oh, well, I started counseling, but I was taking everybody's stuff on board." Which is such a
Mm.
shame, and they give up a career because um, that sort of world needs more empaths.
Mhm.
It's actually something I get on my soapbox about, is that so many people who get into counseling and uh, similar things are they're often very intellectual these days, because it's such an academic pursuit. You need to sit exams and so on. And sometimes the most empathic people are not necessarily the most academic. So they get put off doing that. It's actually one of the reasons that a lot of people become coaches, because you don't have to go through the same hoops to get qualified or certified.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
but
Yeah.
that whole area, anything around counseling and therapy, it needs empathy. Empaths are
Yeah.
in my opinion, they're the ones who make the best counselors and therapists. They're able
For
to see
sure.
beneath the surface. That's part of what
Yes.
happens when your heart chakra really opens and you have that empathy. You're able to relate much more, rather than just, going by what you're told. You're able to
Yeah.
feel your way through things.
Is that you're
100%.
saying something really interesting about getting to this place of heart chakra and older souls. Is that like if you talk about different soul levels, are you making your way through the chakra system in a way?
I think you probably are.
Oh, that's a good
Now
thought.
that is not my area of expertise, and it's not somewhere my spirit guides, entities I work with, is where they go. But I think I have a friend who's very knows a lot about this, and we compare notes, and it does seem to be, yeah, it's very, there's definitely a connection there, and we
Right.
work together with people on this.
Like you start with
Mm,
survival and just
Yeah.
like keeping the
yeah,
lights on kind of mentality to maybe growing.
And
So
yeah,
one thing,
enlightenment, right, at the
yeah,
very top.
exactly.
Yeah.
So reincarnation has been this topic that keeps bubbling up. And I think you being a guest right now, I mean, it's amazing how God works and just like the way that our guests have scheduled has just come
uh
up again and again. And I think for Christians, reincarnation has really never been a possibility, mostly because of what we've been taught, right? Like you die. Well, first of all, you got to live the life. You got to accept Jesus, follow Jesus, live your life exactly the way we tell you to, so you can get to heaven, right? And I think as like people are evolving in their spirituality, they're like, well, but wait, like if we're all God's children, like some go to hell and some don't make it, and that like it just doesn't like totally shake out logically, right? But I guess I'm
Right.
just acknowledging for our audience, like this is sort of could be a quote unquote a taboo topic. But I think it's so important because how you teed it up from the beginning. It's like we are learning to become better souls
Oh, yeah.
through this process and through this school.
Yeah.
And I would really, I do think it would be important for our guests to hear a little bit about your journey because you almost tried to like deny your path, right? For a
Oh,
bit,
God.
like you were fighting it and
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, will you tell us a little bit about that and how you've come to where you are now?
Yeah. The spirit world had to really kind of slap me about to get my attention. It was like, I must be a very, very slow learner or something. It wasn't until my early 40s that I had a couple of epiphanies and it really got me on the track. But I kept hearing from psychics that I was psychic and I should be doing something with it. And it was really strange. I mean, people would approach me in public and go, sorry to bother you. This was in Britain, so of course they're very apologetic. So sorry to bother you, but my spirit guides tell me you're a psychic and you should be doing something with it. And that happened a few times. And looking back, because then I was I was convinced there was nothing beyond. I was just, I mean, I would argue the atheist position. I thought anybody who had any other view was weak-minded. So I wasn't, when I heard these messages, I wasn't really paying attention. And, I look back and there was a woman I ran into at Gatwick Airport, and she's telling me about, what I should be doing and I'm kind of going, yeah, yeah, yeah. And her husband's there, and he's mortified. He's really embarrassed. And but she told me other stuff as well, and of course I didn't file it away in there. And I wish I'd paid more attention. So I was getting the message a lot that I should be doing something in that sort of region, but there were two really big things that happened that I talk about in the instruction. Was I moved to the West Coast and I was getting out of a like very high stress situation, and my nerves were extremely jangled, and probably had been since birth. My life had always been like there's a lot of drama and stuff. It was anything but a quiet life, and so I found myself in San Francisco, in a quiet room, quiet space. Nobody's yelling at me. Nobody's shouting. There's no drama. And I tried meditating, which I'd learned to do probably, years before that. And I went into a meditation. I mean, honestly, probably about 30 seconds. And I heard this voice of a psychic from years before who told me, you're going to end up in California. And I protested. I said, I went there once. I didn't like it. I mean, of course, I experienced like that much of it. And he was going, there's nothing you can do about it, nothing. And it was a really weird thing because it wasn't like hearing it in my head. It was like hearing it in the room. It's like, holy cow.
Like an
Uh,
actual voice.
yeah, yeah, like a booming kind of
Oh,
voice. I mean, it was
wow.
weird. It was like, I mean, I can't quite find the words to explain it, but that got my attention. That got me. Um, Literally, the next morning, I went to Field's Metaphysical Bookstore and just came out with about 20 books, and I read a book a day. I learned to speed read when I was 17, so I got through a book a day, trying to figure out how could a psychic know that? What is how does this whole
Mm,
thing work? And
yeah.
then the other thing that I talk about all the time is I took a trip to Hawaii, and I'm wandering around Borders bookstore, and I ran into my deceased uncle, who had a very clear message about working together. He was only there for like literally a second, but very real. I mean, as real as you or I are,
Wow.
and
That's crazy.
but I mean, three-dimensional, boom, there and gone. But a longer message about working together. So about a week later, I just thought, well, I really don't know how to get started. And I just sat there and I went, okay, Uncle John, if you're there, let me know. And it wasn't like a voice exactly, but certainly a knowing. And still to this day, I've difficulty expressing how I get the information because I get whole sentences, but I do get feelings. It's most of the clairs, I guess.
Okay.
But although the spirit guides I work with say it's mostly clairaudient, even though it doesn't feel like a voice. I wish I had that, because, you know, I actually was with the psychic who told me I'd end up in California. He was literally, as he's telling me, he's going, "What? What? Okay, I'll tell him." He's voice.
Having a full combo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, like a freak show, but um, yeah. So yeah, running into my uncle, that was a really big one.
So, had you been really close with
Practicing.
your uncle in life? Were
Yes, yeah,
you
yeah.
okay?
He was certainly definitely a favorite uncle, but he was like me. He was a total non-believer.
That's what I
He
was gonna ask. Like, did
yeah.
he have these gifts and wanted to bring them out in you?
Well, yeah. Well, what was interesting was that I kept hearing, like even the guy who told me I'd end up in California said, "Oh, your Uncle John wants to work with you," and how I was responding several times. Psychic said, "Your Uncle John," and I'm going, "Yeah, everybody's got an Uncle John." It's like the most common name. I mean,
Whatever.
really. And also, I thought, well, he's the last person I'd be acting as a spirit guide. But of course, it all change. It all changes when you go over to the other side.
Right.
So I didn't talk to him for very long. He just passed me over to other spirit guides, the ones I work with now, and he was just a sort of intermediary again, getting my attention. Um, and I just spent a few nights just chatting with him and questioning him, trying to get ensure that it was him. And yeah, and then well, he just passed me on to these other spirit guides, and their view had always been that I was meant to do this work. But my God, I really didn't feel it. I didn't feel psychic at all. You know, like drank beer, chased women. Wouldn't exactly think I was.
You're like, how is this my
Spiritual.
role? I don't feel like I fit this role
Actually,
very well.
I realized chasing women, that sounds terrible. It's like, oh, kind of running after them.
You're not physically
The truth
chasing them.
comes out. Ainsley.
But, I just didn't. I mean, at the time I was, hearing all, when when psychics were telling me and coming up to me. I was living in London, and my life was full on. I was a freelance illustrator. I'm playing in bands, smoking and drinking. I'm not to excess, but I mean, I didn't think of myself. I thought to be spiritual, you had to be something like, I don't know, Gandhi, like, of course, I mean, I realized that what it means to be spiritual, I think there's so much BS out there. I mean, there's a lot of people who think that to be spiritual, if you do your yoga, your meditation, wish everybody namaste, that's it, job done. But it really has to do with how you show up for other people and the difference you make in this world. Really, it's practical spirituality. And I think there's so many people who consider themselves spiritual or not really. I mean, I'm sure you've met one or two of them in the past.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think your point you're making is so key. And I think this is why it's really important for us, even as Christians, where we've told necessarily that, like, maybe reincarnation isn't it. If our goal is to show up like Jesus did, right? Which is sacrificing and putting yourself out there and protecting the vulnerable. Sometimes it's taking an open mind of saying, like, hey, maybe this helps me get to the destination that I'm trying to get to by
Yeah,
looking at soul ages, by looking at how we can develop and show up from what you're saying, like practical spirituality. I love that term because
Yeah.
it's not just about like, okay, I'm Zen and I'm doing my yoga and I'm meditating and I got crystals around, or on the other end of the pendulum, it's I'm religiously going to church every Sunday and I'm showing up and I'm performing with all of the prayers and the kneeling and the this. It's like, how are we actually showing up in a way that is improving the life of others?
yeah,
And I love this concept of evolving ourselves through different lifetimes
Mhm.
because it makes so much sense. It makes so much
Yeah,
Oh,
sense.
it does.
it does
It would
make so much
way
sense.
more
And,
sense.
older souls who've got many lifetimes behind them, and when they get towards the end, the religion, religion can be a path to spirituality, if you like. But younger souls, they tend to swallow the whole dogma and just like unquestioningly. But when you get to be an old soul, there's many more questions, and there's much more sort of free thinking. Actually, interestingly, most atheists are very, very old souls. What they do is
That makes
they
It does make
sense.
sense.
the dogma no longer speaks on these. I'm thinking about very thinkerly, very rational people.
Mhm.
So the dogma doesn't make sense. They throw the spiritual baby out with the religious bathwater. But yet most people are searching for something spiritual. And interestingly, and you guys would probably know about this more than I, but my understanding is that reincarnation was actually part of the Christian belief until sort of, I don't know, a few hundred years after Christ. It was one of those
I think that that's
decisions they made.
true.
Oh,
I
I
think
didn't
that
know
that's
that.
no,
That's
I think that
awesome.
that's true. I honestly, I was kind of down this thread, this rabbit hole a few weeks ago where I was trying to like find data to support that because
Yeah.
it doesn't say like every other major religion or faith really does support the concept of reincarnation.
Mm.
And it really did kind of come into this play of like more control of like, you have to do these things in this lifetime because all of a sudden, if you open the door to be like, well, if you don't get it right this time, you get another go around, maybe the perception of control isn't as strong as people would like. So
Sure.
it kind of got like compressed down into, nope, you only get this
You
one
get
shot.
one shot.
Yeah, you get this one shot,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
again, like it doesn't really, it's like intuitively it feels off, but
Yeah.
it practically just doesn't seem like that would be the case. But
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. If you
No.
if you came here and you only came once and you die age 3, well, you got nothing done. But if you come and die age of 3, the next time you make it to 90, and the next time in your 40s,
yes,
and you have all this mixture of experience, that's where the growth happens. And it's also, I mean, a lot of people are not able to make really distinguish between religion and spirituality,
right.
Yeah.
religion and the church. I mean, you know, a lot of churches are, they're man-made, and they're there to control others, particularly
Mhm.
women generally,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah,
and
plus two on
reflect.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you two are good, definitely going to be on the feminist side of things, but partly because I looked at a past life that you have shared. So to talk about that,
Okay,
Oh
is
can
my
we talk
gosh.
about it?
Tell
We
us
should talk about it. Oh my gosh, I
everything.
can't wait.
that got
that,
your
that
attention.
got us.
You, you were
Were we
We were trying to
burned?
play it
I feel
cool,
like
Ainsley. We were trying to play it cool at the beginning, okay?
you were
But it
you were
didn't last
dozing
long.
off, and I suddenly woke you up. Look at that. Yeah. Okay. This is it. I haven't had a lot of time to look at you guys, but I do have your personality breakdown based on the system that I use, and this is something that was channeled from the Spirit Guides years ago. So this is the basis of the instruction in my first book. So it's very interesting to see the dynamic and the similarity between you guys. You are here and doing this, but there's no accident. I mean, it's all by agreement. It's all agreement. I mean, you two. How long have you known each other? I'm curious.
We met in
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
So
And
not
did you feel an immediate sort of hello?
absolutely. It
Immediate.
clicked. On the golf course. I was
Immediate.
like, you, me,
Yeah.
we're friends.
Yeah.
Forever.
Ditto.
On a golf course, I love because you both have a physical part to you. Both need exercise. That's part of your soul's plan. But yeah, the past life that I looked at that's shared, it might be researchable actually, because all I know is this, but it plays so much into what we're just talking about. Is now I have loads of clients who are working through issues around self-expression, and they've probably been persecuted in a past life. For their writings or their views or something. And a lot of people have said, especially women who are maybe reluctant to take a more spiritual path or something, and they go, I must have been burned at the stake in a past life. Now, in my experience of looking at past lives for 25 years or more now, I've not seen that. I've seen people who are accused of sorcery. I've never seen a single witch because, of course, they don't exist. But I've seen a lot of people are being accused of witchcraft and sorcery, and but more commonly hanged or some other death. But you
Yeah.
two were both burned at the stake, and in London in the mid 1500s. And that's all I got. But
Oh my God.
but the spirit guys made an interesting observation, um, because oh gosh, just give me a moment because I put it in my notes here.
Yeah.
Hang
Take
on.
your time.
Yeah, but they said you're now looking for understanding. And they said something as well about equality, and they're talking about reforming the institution, trying to take a different look at religion, because this was very much religious. You were, I think, Protestant, and you were just on the wrong side of religious history, and it got you, I presume, tortured as well, but and killed. And you were women in that past life. I presume if you are able to research it, you would find that you knew each other. I would imagine probably sisters or friends or something like that. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to really go into
No.
Oh,
that in great detail, but definitely you had a connection. Maybe you came from the same town, but the death was in London, and so partly, I found this that a lot of people are very drawn to certain periods in history or certain kind of topics because of their own experience. Um, Interesting, like that, sometimes people who've been tortured in a past life have a macabre kind of interest in torture. Maybe they read about it in Wikipedia and they're a little ashamed of their interest. But what the soul's always doing is trying to help you. It's trying to understand its past. It's trying to make sense of it all. And that's one of the things that you're trying to do, both of you trying to make sense of your kind of whole spiritual, religious thing. I think it would also be, why you'd probably be a little bit more interested in Christianity or that, and then maybe Buddhist, and because of the direct connection to that being an experience you had as Christians. So what an experience like that is going to do, it's going to, and you would have, by the way, back then you would still have been very old souls. It's like only a few hundred years ago, and
Yeah.
um, it would definitely make you both. I would really expect you both to have a very strong feminist point of view because of
yep.
having been beleaguered, mistreated women.
Not us. Not us.
Who,
Surely
me?
not. No.
The one that
Also,
all the men are very angry at. We get a lot of angry comments, Ainsley, from men
God,
who tell us to, get back in the kitchen and not speak.
Go get
But
pregnant again and get in the
yeah.
kitchen.
boy. Yeah. Oh, young soul, eh?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're here to really speak your truth, and it's actually a really big one for both of you. It's really speaking truth to power, and learning to really find your voice. And the more that you can do this kind of thing, and nobody arrests you or ties you to a stake, the more comfortable your soul is going to be with really expressing sometimes opinions that maybe previously your soul might have felt were unsafe to talk about.
This is so interesting because when we started,
Uh,
I've had a lot of fear when we first started around this about being physically hurt. If
Yeah.
we, that some crazy person is going to be real upset because we're talking about, religion and Christianity. And what if they come and harm us or do,
Yeah.
so it's just interesting. Would that still be lingering over from that past
Absolutely.
life?
That's
Yeah.
exactly where it comes from.
Okay.
Because although that life is, it's mid 1500s, it's up because of what you do. The moment the moment you get in front of a mic and start talking about this stuff, it triggers, and the fear will get. Remember, oh my God! Remember the last time
Yeah.
we spoke our truth and we expressed our religious or social views, and this dreadful thing happened. The fear will come up, but you are not your fears, and you're never meant to just succumb to them or just go, oh, well, that's just the way I am. Your soul always wants to push you through your fears, and
Yeah.
that's why people with a fear of self-expression or judgment will will end up podcasting. But like your soul is. It's why people with a fear of heights will do skydiving or
Yeah.
bungee jumping because they're trying to face the fear. The soul's pushing them to do that. But so many people who have a fear of public speaking, which is a past life issue or on judgment, um, end up in jobs or situations where they have to speak.
Oh
Yeah,
my
That
gosh.
was
yeah.
me, my early
Yeah.
20s. I was okay, so I was terrified of public speaking, which
Mhm.
people who know me as like now are like, "What?"
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified, and my father was like, "You should take acting classes. It should be exposure therapy," and I was like, "Oh, I hate this." Like, it made me so I had like almost like a physical reaction of standing up in front of people and speaking, and I don't know really where it came from, but the fear was so heavy. And to your point, though, I kept finding myself in jobs or situations where it was like
You had to do it.
unavoidable. It was absolutely unavoidable. And and I joke around like I was an accidental theater minor. I didn't even like mean to do this, but it just sort of was like, I don't know. I just kept kind of maybe a friend invited me to a class. I was like, this sounds
Mhm.
good. And you're like, wait a minute. You have to take a 5-minute videotaped solo presentation in front of the entire class at the end, like I did nobody told me that. But it's true. So
Yeah.
gosh, and
Well, if
it's
if if it helps, I had the same thing, and I couldn't talk in public. 30 years I didn't talk in public at all. Um, but I kept getting in situations and things that I'd done in my life. As a friend of mine said, I've had more 15 minutes of fame than anybody else he knows. And it was always, I was avoiding cameras and microphones. I played in bands. I played bass since I was 14. Um, and I'd be in bands, but I would basically hide behind the drummer. And dude, until I got this sort of resolved, I couldn't even test a mic. And the massive discomfort with being on stage, yet driven to do it. I mean, I was never
yes.
interested in
Yes.
in doing studio work. It was always a live thing I was drawn to. But well, of course, you get a lot of adrenaline going, but, yeah, and then I had this crazy idea to write a book, and my spirit guides went, "You can't put a book out there and not talk about it." So they sat me down to work through the fears, and, then what I helped to would be the equivalent if you're doing, the drama classes would be I went to, Toastmasters, where
Yes.
they help
Oh
you to
yeah.
well, they say help to develop your public speaking abilities. The great thing about it is that nobody really goes there because they just like the sound of their own voice. Everybody's
You're
got
all
a
in the
fear,
same
so
boat
Everybody's
you're
together.
in,
scared,
you're,
right?
you're, you're, you're in good company.
Yeah.
But I couldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if I still had the fear. I mean, I gave a speech on Saturday night, and I was looking back afterwards, like, 20 years ago or even less. I literally wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have gone into the room in case somebody said, "Hey, come on, say something." How quickly the fear can happen
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's all going back to it's a death related fear. It all goes back to a time when you were, um, well, very probably that you were in front of a jury or magistrates, and then you're carted off and burned at the stake. But it could be other things like that. It's usually something like a trial followed by execution. So, um, and sometimes it gets worked through in other lifetimes. It won't be so bad. But if you hit a trigger, something comes up. Um, yeah, I mean these things they ebb and flow and they get re-triggered and so on. But I'm so glad you got over it because look at you now. If you might be like me, as I say, I spent 30 years not talking in public. Now you can't shut me up. Really, it's like I'm totally making up for lost time.
No, it's funny. And I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm like, can you imagine having a God given voice like this? I mean, you have such a beautiful voice. I'm like, you were meant to have a microphone,
Yeah.
just beyond all of your talents. But no, okay. So you said something that I want to hit on. It was like a fear, but driven. And we don't know where that
Mhm.
drive comes from. Is that like our soul pulling us to do what we are supposed to do, and then our
Exactly.
soul guides are, like, setting up the scenarios. Like, can you talk us
That's
through, like,
about it. Yeah,
what's
you've
going
got to
on behind
hit
the
it.
scenes?
So so your soul is pushing you to face the fear, and the spirit guides are the ones who are setting up and, working with others to make sure that you have the opportunities, uh, that you're meant to have. Essentially that's it in a nutshell. I'll tell you another thing about that I found out about podcasters, and the same applies to both of you. Now, um, when you die in a past life, like I described, you feel abandoned by humanity or God, if that's your belief, or whatever. So there's a terrible feeling of rejection and abandonment at the end of the life, and that carries through into future lifetimes. And again, it can be re-triggered, recreated, and what it can do is it can make you feel like an outsider, like you don't really fit into the world, and especially because you two are very old souls, and so you got 90% of the population younger than you. You don't fit into the the typical mold. So the fear of rejection can sometimes cause you to isolate, or feel like you don't fit into the mainstream. Um, But one of the ways that you heal that is to belong, if you can belong to any kind of community, organization, church, whatever it is, and not be rejected, that's great. But if you can be the uniter, if you can be the one to bring people together, that's massively healing. And that's what a lot of podcasters are doing. They don't know it consciously, but you're the Pied Pipers who are creating this following, and you're bringing people in, a lot of whom will relate because they'll have been there themselves. So it's considered to be a spiritual act, and a spiritual act is something you do where you heal yourself while helping those who've suffered similarly to you, whether it's in this life or another life.
Oh, I love that. It's
Yeah.
So
so
beautiful.
it's so perfect too. We actually are just in the process of launching a community. Um, so it's very timely and
That is fantastic.
interesting that you
Yeah.
brought that up
Why
because
does that not surprise me?
Yeah, you're a psychic, you know these things.
Oh my gosh.
But it is true. It's like these, oh gosh, this is making so much sense to me now because I feel like some of my fears are getting kicked up more recently
Uh-huh.
about imprisonment because, like,
Mm.
we're seeing what happening right now, people using their voices and they are being detained or arrested. And that is not something that we've seen in our lifetime in the
Yeah.
United States. So where Rach had this fear of like, hey, I have a physical fear. Very recently in the past month, I've been like, ooh, like what does that look like if we keep going? And all of a sudden females are the enemy again.
Yeah.
And we're challenging power and we're challenging the patriarchy and we are shining a big bright light on actually, Jesus did say that about women. You know what he did about women? He upheld them and he
Right.
exalted their voices, right? Like, what about
Yeah.
that? And that becomes problematic to the younger souls that want to keep a system that they feel safe in.
Yeah. It's all about
So,
safety for them. But and of course, they're the ones who think, well, people are being arrested on the streets and beaten up and shot. It's not going to happen to me. So, you know, it's the older souls that are going, oh my God,
Yeah.
this could turn really ugly. There's an interesting thing too that's I've noticed is that amongst clients of mine, those who've had past lives in Central Europe or Russia or somewhere in that area in the 1920s, 30s, and witnessed the rise of fascism, particularly, and then saw the horrible outcome, um, World War II and the results of all of this, they're the ones who are more stressed out about what's happening because they're able to extrapolate, which again, the
mhm.
younger souls wouldn't be able to do. They don't have that level of introspection. That's one of the big differences between young and old souls. So it's not happening to them. So it's like no big deal. And there's also, particularly with younger souls, but will happen with all of us, is a normalcy bias. It hasn't affected me yet, and everything seems to be okay. And there's still food on the shelves, and You know, I don't have ice running around the neighborhood. So we just assume tomorrow is going to follow on from today and everything's going to be okay. But if you've got that more recent experience of persecution or seeing how, you know, the breakdown of law therefore equals the breakdown of society, and just, you know, all the rules go, and you get mayhem, you know, economic and so on, then you know how bad this could get. And you know, I particularly am extremely concerned about what's going on.
Yeah.
um I mean,
Yeah.
that's why one of the things I talk about is, you know, like you get those people who say I'm spiritual, so I've no time for politics. Well, again, this is all connected, you know,
It-
like, and
we
if
say
you're
that all
you
the
know,
That sounds like a
time.
yeah,
young soul comment, to be
it would be
honest.
absolutely, you know, I mean, but some
Now
old souls will
now that
do
I
it as
know that
well.
I'm an elder, I can
Yeah,
say
yeah,
that. I can
yeah,
say
but
that.
old souls will do it as well, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm spiritual, and you know, I don't want to talk about politics." Well, you know, somewhere, you know, there, you know, as a 5-year-old being carted off to detention camp, and you know, we should all be standing up for the rights of others. We should all be speaking out, lending our voices.
Yeah.
I know it's not safe. I mean, it's clearly not safe, but we should be doing what we can. You know, within our
Yeah.
means. It's a terrible situation, and you know, I know a lot of people are looking to me as a kind of you know, spiritual teacher, if you like a somehow have some soothing words, and there, everything's going to be okay. Very hard to do that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, no, things could get really, really ugly. You know, this is an appalling situation with, you know, huge danger for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got an insane situation here.
Can you Okay, I have a two-part question that's related to this. Can you talk to our listeners about soul ages and, like, how many lifetimes maybe one could expect over the whole spectrum? And then why are people choosing to reincarnate now, right? Like,
Mhm.
Oh, that's a good one, Jace.
maybe
Yeah.
as these older souls, like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, why now for a lot of these lifetimes?
Interesting. Yeah. So, uh, the way that's broken down for me is that there's 10 levels in all. And I mean, it's different ways of expressing this. So there's nothing magical about the number 10 or anything. It's just a convenient kind of way to do this. So, you go through 5 levels as a young soul, another 5 levels as an old soul. You could have anything where between maybe, I don't know, 5 and 10 lifetimes, maybe even more at each level. It just depends on what you're learning, how fast you learn, and what you need to keep coming back and doing. The whole journey takes something like 4, 5, 6,000 years. It's just really depends on so many factors and how much time you spend on the astral plane between lives. But something in that region, and somewhere around 110 to 120 lifetimes would be very typical for, you know, to get all the experiences that you want. So, and when you think of it, if you've got like 110 lifetimes behind you, you've got a hell of a lot of experience. But one of
Yeah.
the most amazing things about that is that when you have that experience, wherever you look, there you go. You've been in every permutation on the physical plane. So you identify with the underdog because you were there before. You see the humanity in others. It's like a who cares whether you're, you know, black, white, gay, trans, you know, whatever. You're
Totally.
seeing the humanity in others because of your own personal experience. And again, young souls, they are much more likely to see the differences than how old souls see what unites us. But you know, eventually you get to that point where you realize, yeah, we're all one. I mean, we're all
Yeah,
in this together, you know, and
absolutely.
and that leads to greater empathy. Leads to greater kindness. But we have a very cruel world because, unfortunately, the people who are most drawn to power, especially right now, are they are younger souls. Somebody who thinks that empathy is, you know, going to bring about the downfall of Western civilization shouldn't be allowed to have any involvement. If you ask me, I mean, that's absolutely just absurd how we've allowed this to happen. Um, So it's sad. It's kind of we're reverting. We're you know the way everything should have progressed. I mean, my spirit guides will say this all the time. The world isn't not the way it was meant to be. We should be developing compassion, kindness, and using our technology to help others rather than to you know possibly blow up the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So, with the younger souls, like if you were to sum up, just for our listeners who maybe haven't read the book, 5 to 10 characteristics, like how would you sum up a young soul versus an old soul?
Good question.
Well, it depends on where they are in the journey, but in the very earliest lives, you just want to belong. You want to you're looking for smaller communities. It's a lot about survival stuff and just learning to be human. And we all go through it. I always stress this. There's nothing inherently bad about young souls, or old souls can be total assholes as well. But I mean, we can all be jerks at any point. But yeah, very young souls, they want fairly uncomplicated life. They don't want to deal with sort of like necessarily the big city kind of thing and complex stuff. But it becomes then all about community. Um, Around about the sort of end of the young soul cycle, you get that's where people. It's meant to be exploration. It's meant to be about exploring, but it slips into exploitation. And there's so many of our world leaders are level 5 souls, and they're not the best. They're drawn to it because of the power thing. That's the aphrodisiac. That's what draws them. And but they don't necessarily have the the highest interests of us all at heart. Once you get into let's see some of the characteristics of a young soul. Usually, younger souls just tend to be more conservative because it makes them feel more safe,
Hmm.
and
That makes sense. More
that's
black and white thinking.
more black and white. Absolutely,
Okay.
not a lot of space for nuance. It really is, good and bad, black and white. Yeah. Um, The older the soul gets, one of the big flips is that when you go into the old soul cycle, you have this, it goes from like an external focus to more internal, more
Yeah.
questioning. Um, you don't get those young soul politicians lying awake at night going, oh my gosh, did I do the right thing? And, you know, it's more like, yeah, did I make another billion today? But the old soul is
Right.
going, is much more likely to go, gosh, I hope I made a difference. And, questioning their behavior and so on, wanting to do the best for others. So once you get into that old soul cycle, you do tend to become more progressive as the soul ages. Again, this is just because you see what connects us, what unites us,
Yeah.
and so we're much more concerned about what's happening to others. I mean, you'll see it with how it is with immigrants and refugees and so on. Like for the young soul, that's the other, and also, the young soul can be very guileless, and they can be, they don't have the experience to be able to see through the propaganda and stuff, so they can be fed, you know, enormous amounts of BS and swallow it, and then just, spit it out. Immigrants are
Yeah.
taking our jobs, or whatever. The old soul is much more likely to question that and go, well, really, how bad is it? And you know, what are we talking about here? It's like much more compassionate, and because of you've had more lifetimes, probably lifetimes as a beleaguered immigrant or refugee, and it helps you to see the humanity in these people who maybe is escaping life-threatening situations.
Yeah.
So the whole thing, it does take
Yeah.
you from sort of like more, like I say, conservatism to progressivism, more from religion more to spirituality, or like you guys, it's this mixture of
Yeah.
religion.
Less dogma.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can have the two together. I always stress, by the way, because people sometimes wonder about what I talk about the system, and I work with and talking to spirit guides. This is not a religion. It's not a philosophy. It's just a teaching. It's just like, what I talk about. It's just what I get from
Right.
the spirit world. Take it or leave it. But,
Mhm.
and that's another thing about, old souls. They don't try and shove things down your throat as much as young souls want everyone to believe the same way. That conformity really, again, it helps them to feel safe.
Yeah.
So, w do people okay, I'm, like, trying to think of how I wanna ask this question, because I do believe okay, so older souls who do have the capacity for empathy because they have lived lives to see that, "Okay, I see myself in you. I see myself in you, and you, and you."
Yeah.
Do you sign up for the really, like, hard stuff earlier on? Like, I think about, like, families in Gaza, right? Like, is that a blend of old souls, young souls? Is that,
Oh, yeah.
we're gonna reincarnate in this life and it's gonna be brutal and it's gonna be a lot of death and pain and
Yeah.
separation and hunger to build off that for future lives? Or is it really just like dependent on each person's soul journey?
Well, it's a little tricky because your spirit guides are there to protect you. Yet everybody's got to have a soul. So
Yeah.
what will happen, and you'll see this in all parts of the world, throughout history, is that there are people who end up in very, very challenging situations for karmic reasons, and that can be that they um, and I always stress this: karma is nothing to do with punishment. There's no force saying, "Oh, you did this awful thing, so now you have to come back and, starve to death in Gaza or something." Um, these things happen. Like I say, everybody's got to have a soul. But what the soul might say is, we knew what it was like to have a lot of privilege in the last life. Now let's see the other side of the coin. Well, this is baby going to be born in Gaza. I'll come into that family and learn what it is to you know not have that privilege and so on. It is tricky because we should never be judging anybody because you're in this terrible situation, so you must have done something bad before. It
Right.
doesn't work
Absolutely not.
like that. But it's all karma is so much just about seeing its balance, seeing the other side of the coin. Um, you do also very often get the younger souls are often dominant. Saying they're the ones who are drawn to power, and can also exercise that power with a lot of cruelty. Again, not to beat up on young souls. You can get some very very decent young souls, of course. But like in South Africa during apartheid, for example, you've got the white South Africans, beating up on the black South Africans. The white South Africans in the main were the young souls, the and the black community more towards the older side of things. Um, but situations are different anywhere. The soul is looking for experience, and is looking for understanding, and once you understand that there are really challenging experiences, but everybody's got a soul. It starts to make sense of why you might come into that situation. If it was just up to us, our conscious minds, to choose our lifetimes, we'd all be millionaires. We'd all be choosing lives of
Yeah.
wealth and comfort. But obviously, you can't have that. But it is that sort of experience of going from different circumstances in each life that builds your understanding and your compassion. Another thing that old souls do to try and maintain, we got a rising population. We got that hockey stick graph of population growth. And so what a lot of old souls do is split off to be in more than one place at a time, 4 or 5 lifetimes, so that you're maintaining the balance of young and old souls overall, but you're also getting a lot of growth. And then the other thing that old souls do, you choose your family and they choose you. And the usual response I get is when I tell people that is like, "What the fuck was I thinking?" You know? And why did I choose these
Who would sign up for this?
what I what I call people who make me go, "Ah, souls." So, um, yeah, but sometimes we choose these challenging circumstances, we don't choose all the details, so it's like we don't choose every little detail, like did you choose to be, abused or molested by your father? Probably not. There's probably a
Yeah.
likelihood, but the soul wouldn't exactly go, oh, I need to learn some lesson about, I need to be molested for a lesson. But they will notice that there's a likelihood, and actually souls will try to reach out to each other to try and prevent it from happening. Of course, it doesn't always work, but sometimes those circumstances can be very, very hard, but it can also be to trigger fears to be worked on. So, for example, you two are both working through a fear of rejection, far from the only one, but sometimes a person with rejection will come into a family where maybe the parents are distracted or not totally there for you. You maybe have some sense of abandonment by a parent. There could even be divorce in the family that the soul saw before coming into the world. So it triggers these things to be worked on. You might be really wanting to work on self-worth, self-esteem issues. It's a past life issue of inferiority. It comes from being treated badly in a past life, or if you had no worth. But you might come into a family where they put you down, or they ridicule you, or they're unkind, to act as a springboard to help you to work on this so that you ultimately develop self-worth. You develop more self-confidence. You've got something to really push against. It's a tough way to get the lessons, and it tends to be a very, very old soul thing to do that, because the older the soul gets, the less it wants to keep coming back. So sometimes it goes, okay, I can get some really powerful lessons here. It's going to be a really tough way of getting it, but it will speed up things, and maybe I can get out of this crazy world at some point.
So, yeah. Okay. So, how do you know when you're done? I'm really tired. First of all,
When do we get to go?
what stage are Rachel and I on the 1 to 10? Because
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking for a little beach float in the astral plane. Okay.
You want the good news or the bad news?
All of it.
Yeah.
There
Well,
is
the
no
good
bad
news-
news.
The good news is you're very old souls. The bad news, you may be here for a few more lifetimes. But
feel
once
that
you've had some R&R on the astral plane, you might feel more like, yeah, I'm ready to come back. You're suffering from a thing called old soul fatigue. It's hard being an old soul, and especially in this crazy young soul world. I mean, it's really it's having a huge effect on the collective spiritual consciousness,
Yeah.
consciousness rather. It's not an easy time to be a sensitive old soul. That is another thing that comes with being an older soul, is a far greater sensitivity. And you two are both super, you're very, very highly sensitive. You're both very, very intuitive. I'm sure you both don't know that. In terms of your soul age, I have to again refer to my notes. Hold on 1 second. Jace, I'll do you first. You're 90% into level 9. Now,
Whoa.
what that means is, that's where Oprah's at. There are a lot of people who are doing a
Dang.
lot. Yeah. So
I need a cane. I know.
You're
My soul
geriatric. You're in
needs
the
a
depends.
walker.
yeah, you're not there yet. I mean, you're not ready to be put out to pasture. You got a couple more lifetimes, a few more lifetimes. You don't know. I mean, you just figure it out. It's it's what you do on the astral plane. So, but it's meant to be a busy life. You're meant to get a lot done, and it should feel at this point that you could practically write a book about it, because it is meant to be multi-textured and busy. Oh, and also, it's not 100%, but almost everybody at this point loves travel. It's a big thing because there's so much growth. Are you a big traveler?
Yeah, I love traveling.
Yeah. Okay, Rachel, you are so close. If this was a horse race, Jason wins by like a nose. It's like that photo finish kind of thing, because you're level 9, but you're 80% into it.
All right.
And
Wow.
the
I dig
slight
it.
difference there is that everybody at 80% has to work through the past life fear of rejection. And so it is something you would, community and friendship and family would be, I think, a big priority for that reason, that you really want to feel like you've got safety and community around you. Is that a big thing for you?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It makes absolute sense. I've
Yeah.
worked through a lot of things of people pleasing, abandonment, my role within the house, struggling between, do I stay at home with my kids and work? And what does work cost me if I get, like all
Oh,
sorts
yeah.
of different layered aspects of that. So that
Absolutely.
resonates a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Because there would be, if on some level, a fear that if you're not around your kids, maybe they'll feel rejected. And you don't
Yes.
want that because that's your biggest
Oh,
fear. Is that you don't want them
yes.
to feel that way.
Yeah.
You're both late level 9, and therefore that would push you to find meaning in your life. It becomes very important. You don't want to just sell cigarettes across the counter or something. Like you got to feel like your life has meaning and purpose. And usually that means that you want somebody to benefit from what you do. You're both spiritual soul types, which is actually, to me, it's no surprise because almost everybody I encounter, or certainly people who are drawn to the work that I do, are spiritualist soul types. And look at what you do. I mean, like, there's hardly anything to talk about there. Of course, you're spiritualist, but what it means is that you want, especially at your soul age, you want to feel that your work does give you meaning, that what you do in the 8 hours during the day, you want to feel like people are benefiting from what you do here. And
Totally.
that's a bottom line for both of you, both spiritualists. Jason, you have a very strong performer influence in you. It's your primary influence. And this comes from past lives as a singer, dancer, or actor. And the
Ah!
funny thing is that people who have that fear, like we were talking about, fear, phobia of judgment, the public speaking fear, they often say, "I couldn't possibly be a performer because I got such a big fear." No, that's why you have the performer in you so strongly, is to try to overcome that fear.
Wow.
So it pushes you to be a little bit more of a people person. It'll give you charm, it'll give you a great sense of humor, and it's a lot about communication as well. Um,
Oh.
you actually here's an interesting thing about you both, um, and I don't see this every day. You both have what's called a desire for immortality. It's not about living forever, it's about leaving a legacy, creating a ripple effect, or leaving the world a better place. Writing a book's by far and away the most common way I see people expressing that, but there's loads of other ways. Do
Oh,
either of you have a book in you?
We
yes.
both talked about
Both.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Jasa's
I
actually been working on it. Yeah.
personally, I've
Yeah.
written about 30,000 words of a book. I've
Wonderful.
shared on the podcast that my second oldest son was diagnosed with leukemia,
Oh my gosh.
and he's doing great. After 2.5 years of chemo, he's doing amazing.
Mm,
And this is one of the first times that I was like, oh, this was totally destined. Like I was having this, like, my world was falling apart, but at the same
yeah.
time, like, really in my soul, it was like, I don't know why yet, but this is happening. And it totally changed the trajectory of my life. And I will forever be so thankful to my son because he saved me. I mean, through his
Mm,
journey, he totally saved me. But um, words just came out,
yeah.
just 30,000 words came out. And then there is a book to be written for both of us, as Rachel
Yeah.
said. And it's funny because I'm like, I don't know how it ends yet. And that's why I'm not currently working on it because I'm like, I don't know yet, but there will be a book
There
written.
will
Yeah.
And
be.
that is like the thing in my heart that pulls on me every day. And it's
Yeah.
not like a panic or an urgency thing. It's just if I could do one thing in this lifetime,
Yeah.
it's to write that
It's
book.
about really helping others. Now, what's interesting about you both having this desire for immortality is that you both also have a desire for fame. And this is not about, cheap celebrity, or just wanting to be famous. Particularly for you, Jason, when you have this very strong performer in you. Well, you both have a performer in there somewhere, but it's a primary influence for you. There's often something. Oh, how do I describe it? If you go back to previous lifetimes, you had to learn to be a performer somewhere, some way. So, like I said, singer, dancer, actor, that kind of thing. So let's say you come into this world and you're going to be a singer when you grow up, but you have to go through childhood. Maybe you're a little girl who, you dream of one day being on stage, It's performers are always the ones who, as kids, they get on the table and they do song and dance routines or declare to the world that one day they'll be the greatest actor the world's ever known or something like that. You don't get thinker types going, one day I'll be the greatest accountant the world has ever encountered. Performers are more expressive that way. But so they do that sort of thing. They do the song and dance routine for everybody. And the message they often get is like, you're showing off. There's something wrong with, being attention seeking. That's actually part of being a performer. It's actually a healthy thing. It's actually good, or at least, channeled properly. So to counter that belief that may be egotistical to want to be noticed, you choose the desire for fame. And you've both done that. And what it means is it's to remind the soul all the time that to be most effective, you have to be well known. The bigger the platform you have, the more you're going to reach people and the more difference you're going to make in the world. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's not coming from a place of ego, in case you ever wonder, because that's what a lot of performers think. Oh my gosh, am I doing this just out of ego? No, it's coming from this deep-seated place where your soul really wants you to touch people and, affect as many people as you can in this world.
This concludes part 1 of our 2-part series with Ainslie MacLeod. In our next episode, we continue the discussion, going deeper into how soul growth shows up in relationships, empathy, and everyday life. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you're ready to take your spirituality to the next level, be sure to check out our website, spiritoutspoken.com. There you can download free educational resources, read our latest blog posts, and join the Spirit Outspoken community.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Spirit Outspoken to stay up to date on news, happenings, shenanigans, and all things Spirit Outspoken.